And Deb will stay to answer questions and be a resource as well. So I want to speak a little bit about ministering to young families because that's how we arrived at Messy Church. One of the things I always say when I give a presentation about Messy Church is that it's not for everyone, right? Like it's not for every church. And so it is a neat idea, but there might be another neat idea that might fit your church perfectly. So it doesn't mean just this might be the thing that creates or spurs creativity, but it might not work in your church, so you might do something else. It's more just to get your juices flowing to think about. So essentially, Messy Church for Mount Zion came out of this question: how do we best minister to young families? We were noticing we have this population, churchgoers, and we every year do planning sessions for mission, we do planning sessions for spiritual formation, we have worship, all these different areas. And one of the things that we looked at was what populations are we serving, and are there any gaps in how we're serving those populations. And one of the things we noticed is that we had this growing population of young families, but we maybe had a gap in services to know how to best meet their needs. Not just their needs in terms of like Sunday school, but their needs in terms of worship, because one of the things we know is that most of our families, not all, but a lot of them are two household working parents, so they want to do something together. We know that Sunday mornings might not be the best time for them. So in other words, we kind of were thinking about who are we missing. So I believe whenever you're starting any ministry that you should do these 4 things. You should find the gaps in the services. Who are you missing? What population are you missing? Then you ask that group what they need. You don't say what they need. You ask them what they need, which is one of the first things we did is we asked our young families, what do you need? What would be helpful? And then once they've said the need, don't sit on it, right? Once they've said the need, you're going to take the time to ask, then partner with them to find a solution or work with them to keep meeting that need so that they can see you heard the need and you're trying. So as I said, make a plan, try to meet it. So why young families? So one of the things that's important is not just that we want young families to come in because we want our church to have people in it and we want people to be up there with children's message. And I mean, you've all heard this, you know that. So I asked them, these young families, what do you feel like you contribute to church? What are the things that you bring? They said wonder, faith, growth. These are from our people, so this wasn't like me making it up, even though I have a young family. Participation, sometimes I get carried away with PowerPoint. New ideas. Yep, again. Change. Excitement. Unique perspective. Energy. Innocence. Bridge building. And like when they said all those things, that got me excited. I think that's exciting things to hear. And I think they loved being asked. Then we asked them, what are you struggling with? Not just at church, but like in general. Like what are the things that you're worried about? We're worried about having enough time with our kids. Even if I am a stay-at-home parent, I still worry about having enough time with my kids. If I'm a working parent household, definitely worrying about having time with my kids. Finding ways to connect spiritually with daily life. So they want church on Sundays, but they also want to know or want to have energy around connecting it every day. They feel very conflicted on the demands on their schedule. So I know in the church world, we lament a lot about the decisions people make about where they spend their time. You should know that they lament it too.
Yep. Yeah.
So we are frustrated, but they are too. And just because they make a different choice than maybe we would want them to make doesn't actually mean that, and sometimes it is the case that it's made willy-nilly, right? But a lot of times it's really not. And I do find it interesting when we then always actually expect them to meet our schedule as opposed to us adjusting. They're worried about fulfilling expectations that everyone has of them, including us. They're worried about their finances. And they worry that they can't give to the church. So, once you know what people are struggling with, then we try to create multiple events that encourage families to come and meet and address their needs, and how we can meet them spiritually, time changes, things of that kind. So we actually didn't take a messy church. That's what we do. No, like we did a whole overhaul. We preached about it. We changed. We really changed the culture in our congregation around children and around young families. Okay, so creating programs that meet needs, having enough time with kids. So then what we did was we took each of those needs and then tried to figure out how to meet them. Okay, so having enough time with our kids. So then we tried to create events that encourage intergenerational participation. So Messy Church, this was where Messy Church came from. This was one of the answers. Because one of the things we learned was that for some people, like it goes for, at our church, it's worship, Sunday school worship, so 2 worship services. For our families, it felt like, that's like 3 hours. That's a long time for a 2-year-old. So how do I separate from them that long? So they don't always want to. They don't, and in fact they don't. So we don't make them. And it's not just about like, oh, your kids are welcome to stay in church, right? It's actually about, first of all, creating the space that makes it feel like they're actually welcome, but then also creating opportunities where it is worship that is for, actually more for the kids. They're worried about finding ways to connect faith into daily life, so we started doing take-home activities. Like at Lent, we'll have take-home things that they can do each week in Lent. Most of you do Advent calendars, I'm sure, that kind of thing. And then we started doing a lot of online, ways to connect online. So Flat Jesus, when you're on vacation, you hashtag us, we see where everybody is. This year we're doing a whole series in the summer on an altar in the world, Barbara and Taylor. So now we're having them, we're giving Flat Jesus a rest. Oh, I know. We've had him for 3 summers, he needs a break. So we're going to have everybody build altars wherever they go, and then take pictures of those and hashtag us. We had on every time they do their first day of school, everybody sends us a picture from their first day of school, and they hashtag us on Facebook, and then the Sunday after we do a slideshow, and everybody in the congregation gets to see them get on the bus on their first day of school. These are things that were so simple for us to do, but like instantly made people connect with us, not on Sunday, which was really, really helpful for us to know them, but also so now we started to think about offering multiple times. Like no longer do we do Bible school all in 1 week. We let go of that. That was too stressful for people. We now do it 1 week for a whole month. Like 1 day a week for a whole month. And then that like changed the feeling around our volunteers. It changed the feeling around if a kid was on vacation, they didn't miss the whole thing. Multiple activities, so different. We do have age-specific events. So we have multi-generational, but then we also have like, okay, focus on this small age group. So for a time we had a mommy and me class, or a caregiver and me is what we call it actually. That kind of thing. And then we just tried, this is more non-tangible, but we just tried to drop the feeling of expectation, right? Like, or that everything was held in the balance on whether or not they attended, right? Like, so, and then we let go of sort of numbers. And anybody showed up, right? The financial constraints, I'm actually surprised at the amount of churches that charge for like Bible school and that kind of stuff. So we had never done that, but I just learned that that's we're trying to think of how we can accommodate this worry about money. Don't charge for basic ministries. If you do charge, make a non-payment option. Provide childcare. So we wanted, an example of this is like we wanted to have our young families get together and just kind of talk on a Saturday morning about, I don't know, whatever. Or another time we wanted to do Love and Logic, the sort of parenting class. So both of those, we bought them food, and then we had like a program for their children so that they could feel like they had that time with their kids, and then there was this time whenever their kids could go and do something really meaningful while they engaged in something really wrong. Okay, so things to think about in worship: are there child-friendly bulletins? Are there snacks? Is worship participatory? Do you outline expectations of children? So, for example, if it's actually not okay for kids to talk a lot in worship, like, just say that. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think it's actually about when parents feel like, oh, but you said it was okay, but it's not okay. Like, I think as long as they know the expectation, they don't get mad about it. They just want to know our parents. So it wasn't us saying, we're getting the kids out of worship. It was the parents asking for a worship space for themselves. So I just want to be clear about that. I think there's a difference between, like, shipping your kids out at a specific time and responding to a need.
And WOW stands for Worship Our Way. So it's geared especially for the younger children.
I am getting to messy church, I promise.
There's also, like, it's when you worship with your own children, you're broken and disconnected from worship because you're so concerned with the noise your kid is making.
Yeah.
An option is if you can find, like, worship mentors for your kids. If you don't have something that you're taking them out of worship, have children, if they're willing, sit with another, like, adopt a grandparent or something.
Yeah.
Because that person who doesn't live with that child is going to experience them very differently than their own parents.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so my son Liam, I started bringing him to worship with me. I went back to work 6 weeks after I had a baby. So, because we had 2 services, I took him with me because I was breastfeeding, and so that my husband could just have like 5 minutes where he was just taking care of one kid. So he has what somebody calls his Cammy, Kathy, Granny, Cammy. And his Cammy and his Bobby, and that's who he sits with, and he loves them, and he's a totally different kid with them than he is with my husband.
Yeah, usually they say better.
So, and I know many of you do these things. These are small but meaningful changes. We have, the main one I would say is this one, which is like this whole area that we have for them, which is like right at our worship space, that has food. And then like, rocking chairs, toys.
And that's in the sanctuary?
It's like, we have like a glass. Yeah.
Yeah, right behind it, but then there's also video and audio feed. So you can stay there with your child. We've had that even during a wedding. A mother was out there with her child, and she was still a part of the ceremony.
Because the whole wall is glass, so except for like this one part. This is like, for me, this is like the next frontier at Mount Zion, which is these are old pews. But then this is in the worship space. The old pews that get painted and they become sensory walls. Like that's, I want that to be in our worship space next. This one I'm not ready for. I'm like, admit it, I'm not ready. This is up front.
Yeah. I know a few
Yeah.
churches that do
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
I'm
it's
just not ready
wonderful.
for it, but there are many people who are. So. Okay, these are all the quick and easy things that you can have kids do. This is our backpack Sunday, where we bless their backpacks, you get all these things. Oh, and I told you about the magic of slideshows. We do a slideshow for everything. Oh, you had your first day back at school? We have a slideshow. You want a vacation? We have a slideshow. Yep, so a slideshow for everything. Oh, Grandparents Sunday? We have a slideshow. Okay, caring ministries. You can do it. I think sometimes we only give meals when things bad happen or good, like birth of a child or surgeries. We change that and we have a caring meal ministry that goes out and we give them a list of all kinds of people going through different things. But now we add just like, that's a family that just could use a meal right now. Like there's nothing wrong with them. Right, like just how, like what a blessing to have somebody show up and be like, I made your family dinner. It was like a game changer. So knowing everybody's names, all this. And so sometimes when I give this presentation, I didn't just lock and load everything, but some of this stuff I feel like I'm like, do I really need to say that? But sometimes I'm amazed, like I gotta say it. The main thing I just want to convey is that whatever supplies you have, they do not need to be new. They just need to be ready. The young families don't want to serve, just don't want to be just served, they want to serve. It just might not be how we have had everybody else serve. They don't want gimmicks, and they don't need, I say they can sniff out bull from a mile away. They know when we're just doing something to like, get them in church. They want somewhere to grow and change, and they don't need bands or screens, they need open minds and hearts, which is true. They like our screens, but that's not why we put them in, actually. Okay, so messy church. Okay. Messy church. I'm going to go to my notes because I want to make sure I explain it well. Okay, so these principles all come, Messy Church comes out of the UK, for those who don't know. It has jumped the pond, okay? I heard about Messy Church from my colleague who's in Wisconsin, Carrie Parker, and she's like my church godmother, because, I just really admire what she does, and so, and I've learned a lot from her. So I saw what she was doing, and I thought, you know what? We can, once we heard all the needs, I found how this kind of meets all those needs, so let's kind of work on that. And then I went to Worship Core and said, here's this idea, and Worship Core said, yeah, let's try it. They didn't know exactly what I meant, right?
Yeah.
But they just had trust in our congregation and our pastors, which is a blessing, so they just kind of let me go. So the idea comes that there's people on the messy edge. There are people who are sort of in the periphery of church, but not like quite in, but not quite out. And then there are people who just out, right? But there's also this weird kind of liminal space. You probably know it, you probably have 10 families in that liminal space. You see them at baptisms. There might be some other kind of times that you see them. Christmas, Easter. Okay. In addition, I think my mouse is dying. Church on the messy edge. So we like to think, right, that church is in the center of culture, and that's just not true anymore. It's just not. So, even though we would like to say we're in the center and all those other people on the messy edge, truth is church is on the messy edge now. We are no longer, and nor should we be, in the center of culture. We should be countercultural. So, if church is on the messy edge, we should embrace our edginess. That's what I like to say. And God is on the messy edge. So I like to think about, God is definitely symmetrical, right? God is really creative. God has order and pattern, absolutely. See? But God is still messy. I think bird poop, right? Like falling leaves, mud. God has some messy stuff going on. So let's embrace all that. The principles of Messy Church these come from the Messy Church book, the first one. The Messy Church books, here's what I'll say about them. The theology behind Messy Church is so important to read. It is like the basis for what you're doing. It's not about the graphs. So it's so important to read that theology. And I'm going to give it to you a little bit, but it's so well written. They do a nice job. The stations and everything in the Messy Church books, this kind of whenever you pick up a curriculum resource and you're like, about 10%, I can use 10%. That's the way it is, right? Part of it is there's a cultural difference. So they're like, get 20 nappies, and you're like, I don't even know what that is. There's just some words, or words for salt, or and you're like, why did you say salt? But that's because it's a different culture. So, but also that's partly it, but it's also just because it's just a different that I think it's hard to convey necessarily. Okay. So it's provide opportunity for people of all ages. It's supposed to be an pan-generational event. We at Mount Zion made a conscious decision that anybody is invited, okay? We tailor all of our crafts around a particular age group. That's because we found that it is best for us to gear the activities for a certain age group because, number one, remember, we're meeting a certain need that we've identified in our church. And that age group was 2 to 5, okay? Now, we have kids up to 11 coming, so but for us, it has helped to narrow the kinds of activities we do. Now, you all these are all things that we have used at Messy Church, and you all had a grand time. So, there's no kind of, but they're very specific on the website, I just want to say that it is all ages. You hear us talking about children because we purposely identify.
Put polka dots on this.
Yeah. The other principle of Messy Church, to help people of all ages feel that they belong in church and to each other. So it's creating a community. To have people have fun together. Oh, you know what? I actually have this online.
Okay.
So furious of taking notes, not necessary. But you can. But just so you know, there's a place where you can get it. Give people a chance to express their God-given creativity. Slowly but surely, we're working our way into having way more creative experiences in worship. Okay? But this is a different ballgame, you know, and we want people to feel like they can just let loose and do it. And this was like moderate messy. We've had some pretty messy. Like, and I have certain people where I'm like, that's my meds and volunteer. Like, I have certain ones that I know are okay. A lot of like slime making, that kind of stuff. This is our traveling messy. And I managed to put in some bags.
Yeah. Where you don't have to, wash the child in the shower.
To invite people into an experience of Christian community. So it's not just for people who know about church, it's also like messy ed, people who have no experience of church at all. Introduce people to Jesus through hospitality. You get a lot of that at Messy Church. Because each of those stations is staffed by someone, a volunteer, so many individual conversations are happening. And then, the wonderful benefit of that is that now, we have a child who still calls her Martha because of her first story being Martha and Mary. Doesn't know her name, right? But knows she's Martha, right? Like, so they have their own connections that I have nothing to do with, right? That they know each other. And then someone once said to me that it was like, the Messy Church was like, like a smaller version of Bible school, and I about lost it. I was like, no, that's not what it is. It's not. It is not about the crafts, it's about relationships. And I think that they were just kind of getting at a simplified version or trying to make it understandable to people, but had like a defensive moment. Okay, so this is how we do Mount Zion, Messy at Mount Zion. Doesn't mean this is how you have to do it. From 6 to 6:30, we have singing, dancing, jumping, storytelling, and general mayhem in the sanctuary. It is lightly controlled chaos.
Sometimes more likely than others.
Yes.
Well, it depends on the size of the group and
Yeah.
the ages. The younger ones, it's almost harder, because they're just wondering.
Yeah.
They're free to be. Danny, the very first week, said to them, and basically she was talking to the parents, it's okay. They are allowed to move in this space. We want them to feel like they can move in this space. So each of them had a permission slip to go and do and climb and.
Yeah, and it was exciting to see the parts that they always wanted to see. They just the chancel area in general was a no-go zone, and they just love the chancel. And they just love the choir a lot. They're like, what's this back here? And they want to know, they know they can't go in the organ. It's one rule is don't get on those organ pedals. But everything else is kind of fair game. And they jump around, and they dance, they sing, parades, yeah. I mean, if you feel like it's getting out of control, you just do your teacher thing, right? Which is oh, now we're going to do a parade, and then you just do it, and they follow. We go outside the sanctuary. This one is Fruits of the Spirit. This one is, we were trying to get at the body of Christ. How do you talk about the body of Christ? What does that mean? And, I think sometimes there's an impression that children do not understand metaphor, and that's not true. They do. They just don't understand it the way adults do. It can't be your metaphor, right? It has to be a metaphor for children. But they do. They understand nuance. So this was actually a folk tale from, I think, Zambia, that we told to get a lot to do. So once a month is what we can handle, and we picked the first because it's easy to remember. We thought once we got to second and third,
Then you gotta count,
Yeah, exactly. Then there's counting and people are confused. First Friday, they've got it.
So how many volunteers in the town?
So we have 8 stations, at least 1 volunteer at each station, plus we have 2 people in the kitchen making the meal, and then we have myself and Deb or Jen, a storyteller, and then a musician. So 8 plus 3, 11 plus, so probably 15 total.
And it depends on how many, I would say that depends on how many children you have.
Do they pre-register? I mean, how do you know who's coming through that door?
Nope,
You don't?
you would just trust, right? Like, because honestly, registering is a hindrance.
Yeah.
Like, you just want them to
And
come.
it's
It
futile,
doesn't even
because
work for
half
vacation
people who
Bibles.
show up don't register, half people who register don't show up.
And like, you know, we just, and then you just figure if you have extra food, you get to deliver that to a family. Like, I mean, that's easy, right? You get, and we do we do tons of kinds of food, like chicken fried rice, we've done spaghetti, I mean, like
Macaroni and cheese.
chicken and
hot dogs.
waffles, I mean, like, you name it. So these are just some, then they come downstairs after the sort of 30 minutes in the sanctuary, then they come downstairs and they can eat and then do their crafts, they can go to their stations and then eat, they can eat, station, eat. They can get, so there is no like, this time is eating time, this time is station time. It's like, once you come downstairs, it's like, do your thing. And we ask families to stay together. Now that doesn't always happen, but by and large, it's meant to be a family experience. Which, I'm gonna talk about this a little more later, but that means there are no parent volunteers. None of the volunteers are people's parents.
Are do the volunteers spend any prep time, or do you just call them and say, will you do it, and they show up?
That's great. So now that we're in like year 3, we have a sort of contingent of people that just, I'd say we have probably 40 people who just like to help with messy. And which is why it is a true intergenerational ministry. People that you don't work with children in our congregation do work in Messy Church. But we, no, they don't have to know anything before. It is set up for them.
We come and
They're constantly, the volunteers are constantly reflecting back the story. So all they have to know is what the story was, how Deb did it. They sit in, we ask them to come to watch the story. And then they come down and do this thing, and like she actually gave a great phrase. You know, when she's showing them the I Spy thing, and she'll say like, isn't that neat, like how you can find these? And like, that's how God works. God finds us even when we think we can't be found. But it's very subtle. It's not a hit over your head kind of, it is metaphor, right? Like the holy fruit. So this was one on emotions, feelings. So this is anger, it's a volcano, we had like, and I hate paper mache. Yeah, I was like, wow, I am getting lung issues right now. This was across a feeling, and each color was a different emotion. But then they brought that emotion to the cross. So this one, these are little glasses that you should see a picture of later, that they colored and put stickers on, whatever, which was that seeing with eyes of love, and it's like kaleidoscope glasses. I just thought you'd like to see. This was actually one of the ones I didn't bring with me, but this is from Noah. This is pudding, finger paint. So you just like eat it and finger paint. This is some of our kitchen helpers. This was like a boo-boo bunny that they like made a boo-boo bunny. We've made hand sanitizer. We've made body wash. I mean, like, you just name it, we made it. Like, you just, if you can find it on Pinterest, we can done it. This is fishing, this is colored rice. Okay, so this is another message just to kind of give you a sense of what another one might look like. This was the body of Christ and the miracle of bodies. So we actually wanted to focus on bodies. I think body positivity and loving your body. Your body can do all these awesome things. You can talk about your body in church, that kind of stuff. So a lot of these were about like how amazing bodies are. So this one was a game they could play with a dice, and then every time they rolled a certain thing, then they could add a body part. And it's like a little, and he like wiggles, and it's kind of cool. This one was called Noodle Anatomy. They used noodles to create a body. And that one you can do like, this one we had multiple, like one, this is for an older kid, but we had a body already drawn for a younger kid. They could just like press some noodles on. This one, these were sensory stations. So this one was each egg, there were two eggs that had the same things in them. There were a dozen eggs. They had to shake and match the sounds. Okay? This one was a smell one, and then there was one similar to it, which was a taste one. Bitter, sour, sweet. What they could guess what they thought it was going to taste like, what it, and they could guess what it was by smelling it, this kind of thing. And then this one, it's amazing what is at your fingertips in your congregation. And if people who have nothing to do with children, but if they know you need something, they're like, oh, I can get you that. So this person actually does have a lot to do with children. She's a kindergarten teacher. But these are x-rays of animals. So we held them up, and then we had this clipboard that had the picture of the animal, and then they had to match it. And then there were cards describing like what the animal can do, what makes it an awesome animal, like it's venomous, it's not, it swoops down. So that was really neat.
Do you have a team that helps you prepare, or do you do it all?
Both. I'm a little bit of a control freak.
That's okay.
Yeah. No, that's there's like a quality control thing that happens with Messy Church, right? Like you actually, like there's a quality control thing.
Judy does the same thing.
But I have a team.
Yeah. But so like, so the first couple, it really was like
All together
me.
all the time.
Like I just was like, But then once people could see the pattern, right? Like it's not like plug and play, right? Like when I look on Pinterest for something, I don't like when we're going to do the parable of the sower. I don't look up crafts with the parable of the sower.
Right.
I look up gardening techniques for children.
What I'm
Right.
asking is, did you paint all those all those toilet paper rolls, or do you have a
No,
team?
I know I'm getting there. Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm saying at first like that's what I did, but then once I felt like okay, people get it, then I started like asking people to come help in the middle of the week. And those were some of my stay-at-home moms who were just like really excited. So because I didn't want them to volunteer that night, so they would do. So no, actually Melissa painted those toilet paper rolls.
Okay.
Yeah. There's a team of people that help me implement.
That's what I'm.
Okay, more bodies. This is Mr. Potato Head, huge Mr. Potato Head, and they could, And then we've started now every Messy Church, we now have a photo booth, like a selfie station, and so this one also had with it like the same things, but they could do it to themselves. This was a microscope
Cool.
that we got, and they could see it on the iPad, like whatever they wanted to put. And this was a game where they measured their head, they had stethoscopes, they measured their heartbeats. Okay, so here's what Messy Church is not. And this is where the culture shift comes in your congregation. Messy Church is not practice church. And one of the ways that we communicated that to our church, so I think like how do you communicate that? So I come from a 2-pastor church. My colleague has retired, but when we first started Messy Church, we said whichever pastor worked with Messy Church did not come to worship on Sunday. Because this is worship, right? Like this is our worship leadership for the week or the month. And then the next week we were back on Sunday. But then in the announcements we would say, Pastor Danielle is not here this morning because she led Messy Church on Friday. So it soon became just this culture of like, yeah, that's another worship service that we offer. And we wanted people to see that it takes resources to offer a ministry at large. So it takes time. And this was my time for the week. That's where it went. So that was good. And that communicates to the congregation, this is a real thing. And it counts as worship attendance. It's not a magic bullet. I don't hear anybody thinking that. It's not a babysitting service. Families do need to come. You can't actually drop your kids off. That we've never had to say to anybody, you can't do that.
But you laid that out beforehand.
We did lay that out beforehand. And I would, in a heartbeat, tell someone, you can't drop your children. We're not equipped.
Because we have that at Vacation
Right.
Bible School, and yeah, we're not equipped.
it's not something that fits every church. So here are some pro tips. Incorporate many generations and don't have your parents be the volunteers. But so this is actually a really an easy way. It's an hour and a half, so it is not a huge physical, mental, emotional demand. So some of your more elderly members might really benefit from spending an hour and a half with our kids. And not every station is physically demanding, right? I can't say this enough. Schedule on a day other than Sunday. So that's partly because we asked our parents, right, Fridays. But the other reason is because if you are trying to work with people on the messy edge, Sunday for them is not church day, right? So it's not going to program in their mind. It's the event that gets programmed in their mind, not the day. Think about all types of learners have stations that are kinesthetic, auditory. So like I said, this one was it's all about touch, but it would also had headphones. So we try to make sure when we look at the span of the 8 stations, is every station kind of touching on some kind of learning ability. I'll also say this, there was a time in our congregation where we had a large population of children with autism. And this was an unintended benefit of this ministry because it was a very safe place for children who are on the spectrum to feel like they can experiment, but nothing is a must, right? It's not a station of 20 minutes. They can opt into the ones they're comfortable with. They can be with other kids, but it's okay for them to not be still. There was lots of needs that met, and that was an unintended benefit.
And it was not.
We recommend folks that it's a pro tip. We recommend the age group, but Messy Church does not recommend the age group. So for us, that made it sort of mentally easier to wrap my head around. Don't charge, budget appropriately, which I'll get to that in a second. Think outside the religious box. So look at secular resources and adapt them. I think I went into that a little bit. Search for things like science for preschoolers, that kind of stuff. Regarding the budgeting, so a lot of people ask how much does this cost? So at Mount Zion, I'll say 2 things. The first is that I budgeted for $200 per messy church. That is not how much each messy church costs. But sometimes I'll get a messy church. Like, it's not impossible to think that I might have had to buy those x-rays. I spent $9 to bring this messy church to you, and it was on baby oil. Everything else we had, but so I think the longer you accrue things, the less you spend actually. But I wanted to be sure, and for example, our people who do the food, that is a ministry that they give. They don't ever give us the receipts. But that's always an option, and I always budget for it because I don't want anyone to not serve because they think they're not going to get reimbursed for their expenses. Okay, so that budgeting issue, but at first, and this is how at Mount Zion we start any new ministry, to be honest. We have a thing in November when you're sort of building the budget. It's called our sponsorship tree, and we put on it leaves that have all of new ministries that we want to do, plus some ministries that we know are important to people, but that we just say, like, if nobody sponsors these, it's not going to happen. We're not going to do it. And then we put them in increments of $10, $25, $100, $50, and they're on the tree. And then we have 3 weeks where they can take leaves off the tree, and then they write their name on the leaf, committing to giving that much money
For
that ministry. Then in January, we send them a thank you note, then they submit their donation. So that's how we start a Messy Church. We put Messy Church on the leaves and ask people to sponsor it. Now Messy Church is part of our budget. It is. Is it? Yeah, it got folded in this year. Yeah? But the first year, we had $10,000 covered on our tree. We just made it, yeah, and all of it got covered. So we learned that people want to know where their money's going.
Yes.
So this tells them, and that's why we put things that are really important. Like we put confirmation on there one year. And the first year we did it, everything on it was children's ministry, and I was like, this is my entire job. It's on there, right there.
There's no permanent budget for her job.
But it all got covered. Now it's different. Now we have advertising on there, some children's ministries, like it's all different stuff. But because now people get it. The first year we had to make sure they really knew, like, no, there won't be any summer Sunday school. That will really happen. And then we had to like be ready to not do it, which is horrifying. But it worked. I don't know. Now I'd say it's about, I don't know, $5,000 or $6,000 that gets covered. But that's because our giving increased. Yeah, and our membership increased. Oh, okay. This is like a parent saying this. If you're going to make something, make it useful or functional. Every activity does not need to be something you bring home. Yes. Okay, I know. Yeah, we're almost done. He's telling me I can shut up. So, I just, you all remember that? Like, just the papers, all the papers. And like, they're so special, but you can't keep them all.
They want you.
They want you to. Yes, and it's like a hidden box that mommy puts them in. I just take out when you're not looking. No, so not everything has to be something you take home, which is why it's perfectly fine to have a station with just water that they can play in. It's, how use that is so, like we use that on every car trip. I spy jar, I don't mind a painting, right? I don't want 20 paintings. Decorate the space and serve kid meals. So this is kind of similar. We do a rainbow theme every month, just because that was like what I could find at the Dollar Tree. So, and take the time to do it well. So if I could like see a mistake of messy church right off the bat, it would be like, you heard this presentation and you went home and you were like, next month we're having messy church. It just takes so much more buy-in than that. It takes more than you, and it takes more than one other person. Like it just takes conversation with your congregation, because you want to prepare them so that when they do see a child jumping off the chancel, that was what we told them to do in messy church is okay. You kind of want to prepare everybody for what is to come.
And you call it messy church.
We call it messy church.
Like,
Yeah, so that's the other thing. Messy church is it is a term that the people in the UK encourage you to use. There are parameters which they say, like, if you're going to do this, don't use that name. Call it something else. But it's very loose. Like, it's ours fit under. You can adapt the program. Like,
Because we talked about the age thing.
there's a specific thing about, like, this is for everyone. Which it is for us. We just tailor something specific to a certain group. But but they don't say, like, we're gonna come sue you. They say, like, use our title. Like, use it. It's a ministry to be shared. Okay, time and energy. I've just thought maybe you'd like to know how much time. When I first started Messy Church, it took me like 40 hours. I'm not gonna lie. You're looking at me.
40 hours a month.
For the first one.
40 hours a month.
Yes, get the first.
Yep. And
But part of that too was just making sure that we had all the supplies. Okay, now we've got a whole wall full of paint.
yeah, like the greatest like sort of trick of ministers is that we think we act like the time that we spend searching for things on Amazon isn't work time, but it is. So 40 hours is not an unrealistic amount of time. Or the fact that like I need to communicate with my volunteers. I want them to feel like they know what to expect. And all that got easier the longer I did it. So my volunteers need much less hand-holding now. And a lot of the supplies now we do have, right? So I would say it takes me a lot less time. And now that I know kind of like the kinds of things to get, like what are the kids like? What are the different, it's just not as hard to find. And then this year, I got an intern. She's awesome. There was like probably 4 months of training, 4 months of her shadowing as a church, and then the last 2 months, she has done it all. Yeah. So I think, I would say 40 up front, but that's, I don't want you to feel like it's undoable. It is not, I don't know, it feels like a joyful 40 out, I don't know. It was like the best time of my month. I told you about money, personnel, and I think if you're at a solo pastor church, you might have to work around, right, you're gonna miss that Sunday, right? Like currently I come to the church on Sunday because I'm with a part-time person, so I'm in. But that's been okay. But I will say, like, when I was spending all that time on it, the Saturday after, I was like a noodle. It was worthless. So the physical space, you just want it to be someplace that you can get messy. Don't be afraid of that. We recommend not doing the story in the same place as the stations, just so you can understand why. Like you saw, as soon as you walked in, you were like, that's how that goes. Okay, so this is us. And then down here, this is our website that has links to videos of Deb doing different stories, so you can kind of see other than, like, what are the other things that she did. And then it also is a link to this PowerPoint, so that you can download the PowerPoint as a PDF. And we really believe in resource sharing. I believe in resource sharing. I do not believe in hoarding so that another church can. I think, and it sounded like, based on the emails that were sent out, that that's the spirit of this event. Is resource sharing.
Oh, yeah.
So,
That's funny, flattering.
if I don't respond, you should email again. Because it just means it went down too far down in the inbox. Do you know what I mean? Like,
And did we mention that she's a single pastor right now?
yeah.
Danielle, what's